elder abuse. Most markedly in your physical exam, you'll often find things that are indicative of potential elder abuse. Also in your evaluation of the patient and discussion and interview of the patient may give you key indicators of abuse may be going on. And lastly, and I'll go into more detail on all three of these, is kind of the environment, that the patient is in. So we'll start with that, looking at the environment that the patient is in. Generally speaking, you may be entering into a uncleanly environment or very disorganized or cluttered environment. Now that can either be a function of the individual themselves or it could be a function of the environment that their caregivers are giving for them. So taking a look at that environment is really important, looking for clutter, looking for bedpans or urinals that are laying around, or is the patient actually still laying in excrement or urine? Those types of things can kind of be a key indicator of caregivers not giving as much care as they should to the individual. When we start talking about the interview of the patient, certainly the things that the patient say to you as a provider could also give you some indication that there's abuse going on. Are they indicating depression? Are they indicating that they're not getting their medications as they're supposed to? Are they indicating that they've missed doctor's appointments? A number of different things along those lines could lead you down the elder abuse road. Your physical exam is going to be equally important. Certainly if we're talking about physical abuse, that's where we'll find the majority of what's going to give us our hints. Are there bruises that are in different levels of healing? Are there burns that aren't explained? Are there injuries that aren't being talked about? So all of those things can lead us to elder abuse as well.
It's absolutely critical to document cases of elder abuse and neglect, especially in New York State. Let me start out why that is and then get to the specifics. Much to many people's surprise, New York State is one of only 5 states in the United States that does not have mandatory reporting for elder abuse and mistreatment in the community. All 50 states have it for residents of nursing homes and adult homes. All 50 states obviously have it for child abuse. But where 95% of our elderly residents live, which is in the community, in our neighborhoods, in our towns, there is no mandatory reporting for elder abuse in the community. We are a voluntary reporting state. So the reality is that in New York, we have no database. We have no system. Therefore, we have no clue of how prevalent the problem is. And we have New York City with, what, 8 million people who live in it. We have no idea, we have no data of how bad or good the problem is in this state. If you don't have that data, how can you adjust policies in your department, in your agency? How can we pass laws to address the issue? How can you provide resources to victims or service providers to meet the victims' needs if you have no idea how many victims are out there? So that's one very important thing to document. Maybe even more important is that down the line, some of these cases in fact end up going to court for guardianships, Article 81 guardianships under the mental hygiene law. An extremely important piece of these court hearings, and I've been involved in many of them, is in order to go for a guardianship, you have to show that that adult, that often older person, is impaired enough that they're at risk to themselves or others. If you have documented the number of times that you stepped out of the house, what you've seen, maybe what the person has shared with you in terms of how they're being treated, the physical surroundings, the care and condition of that older individual, those documents or those notes, as insignificant at the time as they may seem, may be a critical part in being subpoenaed for court for a judge to make the determination to protect this older adult. Because many of these older adults who are victims, they can't defend themselves. They can't really fight back. So it's up to the court through Adult Protective Services or maybe another family member petitioning for a guardianship. It's the last protection they have that might save them from a horrible death or a horrible continuance of a living situation. So documentation is absolutely critical. One thing we say, and it's a truism in elder abuse cases is elder abuse, once it begins, increases in severity and frequency over time. You may be coming in halfway through a scenario where you're called in on an emergency from a 911 call or a neighbor calls. You may be halfway through it. If you can start to document there, as the situation deteriorates later on, you can help show the pattern. So again, a determination by a court can be made, perhaps, that can protect this person who can no longer protect themselves. So documentation is absolutely critical in establishing numbers and establishing a course of action.
There are a number of ways that you should document elder abuse or suspected elder abuse on your medical record. One of the most important things is to be specific and elaborate on any answers that were given to you that you think would lead down that road of elder abuse. Using things like specific quotations. So as you ask your patient questions, document the exact response. As you ask the caregivers questions, document the exact response. That exact response could better frame the potential for elder abuse for people that are investigating it down the road. It is important to document all of the same things that we would document on a normal medical record. So we do an excellent subjective documentation, everything that was told to us, making sure we're getting all sides of whatever the issue is at hand, medical, whatever. It also is really important in the setting of a potential abuse case to do an excellent objective documentation. So really documenting the environment, especially when we're talking about hygiene issues or we're talking about environmental issues that may be able to be referred to Adult Protective Services. Also, the physical exam is going to be critical in this, especially in settings of physical abuse. What are we finding? Are we finding bruises at different stages of healing? Are we finding gloving burn injuries? Are we finding signs of malnutrition, clothes that don't fit well? All of these things on the physical exam might also lead down that road of potential elder abuse. Our documentation of our actual impression of the patient, is the patient looking malnourished? Is the patient dealing with multiple conflicting medical issues at the time? So all of those things will lead down the road on your documentation of either potential elder abuse or not, and give the investigators later down the road more information to work on as they're developing their case in this particular instance.